Hello and welcome to PD in a Pocket, the PD series specifically for family daycare educators. I'm really excited today to have Anthony Semann with me. I'm sure many of you know who Anthony Semann is and know of his work in the sector. Hello, Anthony.
Hey, Lisa, how are you?
I'm good. We're talking today about critical reflection. And specifically, obviously, critical reflection for family daycarers. So family daycare educators, can I just ask you to define what critical reflection is to you?
All right. Firstly, I think this is the most fabulous topic, I have to say. You know, critical reflection has been something I've been thinking about both when I've been working directly with children and also managing programs, including family daycare schemes when I was at Marrickville. But even now, I keep on thinking about why it's so important to talk about this. So I'm very excited. I'm glad we're not talking OH&S. Let's just put it that way. How do I define it? You know, there are lots of people who begin to define reflective practice. Like, I think about this, there's this guy called Scone, and he talks about you can do reflection in practice or reflection on your practice. And what he argues is basically reflection is the opportunity to stop, think, and then act. So, we find ourselves in a situation that makes us stop. And it may be because it's a challenging situation, there's a clash of values, something unknown, or even sometimes something that excites us. So it makes us stop. We think about it, and we can talk about this in more detail a bit later on if you like. We think about it either by asking questions, looking at research, talking to our colleagues, ringing, the family daycare scheme and saying, I've encountered this, what do you think? And then based on that, then we act. Lisa, reflection without action, if I can be cheeky for a moment, is navel gazing. Reflection has to lead to something. It doesn't necessarily need to change in practice, but it may lead to a change in your thinking or a change in your attitude. So if I can just spend like 20 seconds talking about in and on, sometimes you may be in the middle of doing something with a group of children in your backyard and you are reflecting while you're in the middle of something. That's one part. Or the on might be at the end of the day, the families have collected all their children, you're making a cuppa and you're sitting back taking a breather in your home and you reflect on something that has happened. So it can be in real time or it can be after a situation, and both are equally as powerful.
Okay, so that, remember I'm an outsider, I'm not an educator or a teacher, so I'm trying to get my head around this. That seems to me to be an answer about what reflection is, and I can see how reflecting on your practice would be really important for an educator. What's the difference between reflection and critical reflection?
Good one. There's three things. There's three words that we throw around. Reflection, to think about. Critical reflection, to use other perspectives, theory, an article you read. Okay, so you're bringing other perspectives in that are critical, meaning slightly jarring, not your view, someone else's view. And then there's this other fancy word, reflexivity, which is to think about yourself, asking questions about you, not about others. So if I was to be, for example, reflecting on what is gender equity in my family daycare scheme and what does it look like in Home Corner, I might be saying, I think gender equity is giving boys the opportunity to go into Home Corner and girls the opportunity to play rough and tumble play outside. Critical reflection is I might turn to Germaine Grayer's work that says actually women stay in the kitchen. That's where you control men. Why would you ever give up the place that you are most powerful? So actually keep the boys out of the Home Corner because that's where the girls are powerful. And she argues, I remember reading this, if your husband really does upset, you make him a crappy meal.
Love it.
And she said, we don't ask men stop being motor mechanics. So why are we asking women to leave the kitchen? So critical reflection can be like, what? Now I'm having to, for example, keep the girls in home corner. Reflexivity then might be, wow, so I'm asking questions about me, all right? So here I am in an absolutely critical role in the lives of children. I am undertaking, teaching, and hopefully children are learning. And part of our work with children is not just education, but also care. Is there perhaps an inherent problem that most educators are women? And are we sending a particular message to young children that caring is just women's business? And is that in itself a problem? Am I causing a problem?
Or are we sending them a message that caring is an awesome thing that women
absolutely
have traditionally always done?
That's right. So we're asking questions about ourselves. So in summary, reflection is talking to yourself. What do you think? Critical reflection is having other perspectives that often are challenging or different. And reflexivity is asking questions about you.
Okay. So one of the things that gets me, the more I've been researching this topic, that I'm really confused about is that our learning frameworks seem to make it really clear that critical reflection's needed in quality area 1. It's about children's learning. But then the NQS seems to come on top of it and says to hit an exceeding rating, you've got to do critical reflection about everything. Is was it initially there in the learning frameworks, then some interpretation of the NQS came and screwed the whole thing up? Or
if there's one thing that I can change about how educators, including family daycare educators, reflect, is don't reflect on everything. And that may seem controversial and against, the wave of received wisdom. But too often we'll say, so this week's reflection, we're going to talk about gender equity. Next week's reflection, let's talk about what Aboriginal perspectives looks like in practice. And now next week, and we keep on jumping from topic to topic. It's like speed dating, hey? Are we actually giving people enough time to really think, to really go deep down into a topic? It's the difference between surfing the surface or diving deep. And I think when we say, yes, reflect on everything, I would perhaps say everything is up for reflection, but take your time. Like imagine this, Lisa. Imagine we worked in a scheme and the coordinator said, we're going to spend 6 months online, through phone calls and support, really exploring what does cultural diversity look like. Let's not rush through it. Let's watch some shared videos online. Let's read articles and come online and have a chat. Let's chat when I come and visit you. But let's take our time. The knowledge I will get by reflecting on something for 6 months would be very different to kind of, here's your reflective question for the week. Yeah. We don't honor that it takes time to both gather information, read other perspectives, and then ask yourself, what does this mean for me? What am I going to try? Yeah.
So one of the things that it seems apparent from what you're saying is I can see that, that you would be able to reflect much more deeply if you were concentrating on one area. Is it just coincidental that the areas you've spoken about so far are closely twinned with social justice or fairness? Or is that something inherent about critical reflection, that it does have something to do with fairness, like things like gender?
Maybe, yeah. Look, there's this really lovely saying I came across once, which is, we teach who we are, which is like in itself, you can reflect about that. I teach who I am. And maybe my examples speak more to my politics than anything else. we can talk about, you can reflect on other issues that aren't social justice issues. For example, what does, I suppose I'm going to stop. How do we even define social justice? Does it lead to a better world? Because the example I was going to give, what does a real partnership with families look like? One could argue that is a social justice issue. Should we let children engage in risky play? Some would argue that is a social justice issue. It creates a more just society, particularly for children who like to be outdoors or engage in risky play. Why do those issues, though, tend to come up? There's this great author, he's a really cool dude called Nicholas Rose. He wrote a great book, I think it was called Reinventing Yourself. And in that, he famously wrote, and I think maybe it was one of his, well, I'd say one of his most famous quotes, and let's not get lost in the language here. He goes, make your narrative stutter. And what he meant there was make your story stutter. And he said, by asking the question, we should begin to sweat. The question we ask should make us nervous and uncomfortable. And I think sometimes social justice issues, because they are value-based, they do make us sweat. They do make us stutter. And maybe that's why social justice issues or equity issues tend to come up in our reflective conversation, because they are more about values, some would argue, than about fact. Right or wrong, whether I like it or not, depends on how you see the world, really. And so maybe the social justice issues come up because they speak to the heart of our values, and they take time. You can't get a yardstick and measure social justice.
So therefore, extrapolating from what you've said, it would also, critical reflection would mean interrogating your internal biases about social justice things. So if you were kind of looking at, if you were critically reflecting on multiculturalism within your service, you would have to interrogate your own beliefs about race and racism, etc. Is that right?
Absolutely. Hey, there's a great article by Professor Karen Martin, and it goes like this. The title is, what do you get when you put earth-coloured paint on toilet rolls? Earth colour paint on toilet rolls, not didgeridoos. Now, even that makes us stop and go, wow, you can't make a didgeridoo out of toilet rolls, can you? There's nothing inherent Aboriginal about a toilet roll with earth-coloured dots on it. That makes us stop and think, can make us uncomfortable. But the beauty of even the title of that article makes us have to give rise to some personal reflection. Can I really say I'm doing Aboriginal culture when it's reduced to a toilet roll?
Probably not.
I would say it is definitely not Aboriginal culture. So, those questions, Lisa, those moments like that, those questions make us stop and make us think. And that is a good thing. The thing I love about early childhood, we are a really broad church. And in this broad church, there are different ideas. People will think A, someone will think B, someone else will go, no, the truth is C, and someone will go, actually, you're all wrong, it's D.
Or if it's on Facebook, it'll be 1,000 people with 1,000.
Yeah, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, yeah. And that is never a sign of weakness of a sector. That is a sign of strength, that we can sit with different views, debate them, but never debate a person, debate the idea. As soon as I start going, well, you suck, Lisa, we're actually saying the idea that you're putting forward seems strange to me, but have a guess what? Doesn't mean it's wrong. I might learn something from you if I remain curious and open. But if I'm fragile, then I will see your different view as an attack on my identity as a family day educator. I'll be going, well, you say I suck. You saying I'm bad. Well, no, actually, if you think I'm bad, what you should say is, hey, Anthony, I think you're bad. But what you're really saying is that idea, I think differently to you. And that broad church is a gift to our sector.
Okay, so that we're not talking all day, which I'm sure I could easily do on this topic, and I love the fact that
Sorry.
I love the fact that you're so passionate about it, because you're making it a lot clearer for me, and I'm sure for our listeners and viewers as well. But how do you actually go about it? Like, I love the scenario you suggested of a coordinator suggesting to all the educators they're working with, let's explore this, and then providing them with, with articles and topics and provocations, etc. But how else can it be done, and how can an educator critically reflect themselves, and when would they do it?
Okay, good one. One of the things that, and I don't know about other species, I'm sure they do, but we encounter things and we think about them. And I think one of the great things you can do as a family day educator is when you encounter something that makes you think, that feels uncomfortable, that perhaps a new idea that you've never thought about, just pause for a moment, jot it down, because life is busy, and don't feel like you have to solve it straight away. There's that crazy saying, if you've got a problem, come with a solution. That drives me mad. Why would I come to you with my problem if I have a solution? I should figure it out myself. I think sometimes what will happen is people will encounter a situation they feel uncomfortable with or they're excited by. Talk to someone, whether it's, someone from the coordination team or even someone in your family. Just start a conversation and saying, hey, I know I've clocked off for work for the day, but I've been thinking a lot that NAIDOC week's coming up, and I really want to help children understand what it means to live and work on Aboriginal land, but I don't know where to start. Like, just putting your question out there, it's kind of like putting a flag, into soil and saying, I'm thinking about something, but don't feel like you need to find the solution straight away, because it might take you time to try to find a solution. But here's the thing, always be a hunter for ideas. As an educator, if you hunt for ideas, if you just go, now my flag is in the ground, I know I need to learn more. It's the learning more that helps you grow. Because if you just keep thinking and not learn other ideas, it's like you're in this echo chamber by yourself and you're just talking to yourself and the ideas are just bouncing around. But you might say to yourself, I'm going to Google Aboriginal or Australia Day, different perspectives, and just engage with ideas. The more you can engage with ideas, you will hear different perspectives. And I think that's what you can do, is just say to yourself, what has challenged me or what has excited me? And how can I learn more about it? The more you learn, the more you'll reflect. Even people watching this video, they might end this video and say, I've got a question. What does reflective practice look like for me? Put that flag in the ground and say, I now want to think about this, and talk to others if you can. Yeah.
So Anthony, how, everyone's so hell-bent on proving that things are done for assessment and rating, those processes that you talk about, I can see that they'd be really valuable. How would educators prove that they've done that for assessment and rating?
Yeah, good one. Okay, so one thing you can do is grab yourself a scrapbook or something. I am not for more documentation. I believe if reflection becomes a form of accountability, then we're not going to do it. If you're doing it for the sake of assessment and rating, your heart isn't in it. It becomes like, I've just got to jump through the hoops. First and foremost, say I'm doing it for me because my professional growth is important to me. How might I reflect? Get yourself a scrapbook, or even, one of those folders that has those plastic sheets. I'm sure there's a fancy term for them in Officeworks or something. Kmart, wherever you go and get them. If you read an article, pop that article in there. If you've listened to a podcast or something, just write it down. Just collect data. Here's the other thing. If you want to get really, really fancy, you go and spend $49 at Officeworks or somewhere else that sells stationery. We don't want to just push that one. And you get one of those little USBs that is it's a recording device that has a USB attached. When your coordination team come to visit you, and because you're committed to your growth and development, you want to have a conversation with them, record that conversation, because that's evidence. I remember when I was a director, we moved beyond taking minutes. No one reads minutes. So we used to record them. We used to record our staff meetings. And when we went through what was then called accreditation, I remember someone, were they called moderators? Anyway, those people that came to visit you said, oh, where's your reflection? And the last thing I want is another diary. Like, diaries do not tug my boats. Like, it's not me. And I said, I have hours of recordings of staff meetings where we talked about risky play, relationships with families. What are we going to do for Australia Day? Would you like to listen to it? So I recorded them in those little USB
Did they ever
things.
take you up?
No, because I had something like 120 hours. But what I did, when I put it into my computer, it downloaded into iTunes, and I just put titles so people could go back. It's reflection. Nicholas Rose once wrote, as soon as you write it down, you edit yourself, because now it's public. Are you really going to say what you think? Because if we all make public what we think, we'll have no friends. Really? Yeah. So,
please, Anthony.
Maybe that's our problem. So I would, for example, whether it's a one-pager where you just scribble some ideas down that you've been thinking, or the question, we love a mind map in early childhood, whether your question goes in the middle and you just put ideas out or a reflection. The thing is, don't make it too much paperwork, because then what happens is the focus is the paperwork, not the thinking.
Okay, cool.
The other thing I would say, Lisa, is just trust yourself. When you go through assessment and say, how have you been reflecting? You could say, I would love to talk to you. Have a seat. In February, I thought gender equity was about blah. In March, I watched this movie and then I thought it was this. And then in August, I did, and just tell the story of your journey of thinking. Yeah.
I wish that everyone could understand that message of trust yourself a lot more when it comes to accreditation and rating.
You've got to back yourself. You've got to back yourself.
We have to finish this. One key message you'd like to give educators about critical reflection. If you can, talk to others about what you're thinking. Invite people into your thought process, whether it's a family member, whether it's actually a family of a child who's attending your program, whether it's someone in the coordination team, whatever it is. Children themselves. And I would argue reflection always starts with a question. Start it with a question, not some random statement. So the question could be, for example, what does teaching literacy look like in my family daycare home? If you start it with a question, it opens up possibilities, and don't rush through it. Honor it takes time to think. And if you can honor it takes time to think, things will get transformed. Thank you very much, Anthony. On that note, I think we'll finish. That's given people, I'm sure, lots of ideas to critically reflect about and to be able to work out where they are, where they want to be, and where to, how they can get there. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, everyone. Bye.